Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the All-Star Wrestling Review Series for the 11th of February, 1978. I love this stuff because I hadn't seen it before, obviously, not becoming a fan until 89. I love watching stuff that was from a bygone era. I also love watching stuff I've never watched before because I learn. Anyhow, Vince McMahon opens the show, and obviously All-Star Wrestling starts in 1971. We then see S.T. Jones and Pete Austin against Paul Butcher Vachon and Baron Miguel Cicluna. Cicluna had been a star in the area and since about the 1950s or so. Obviously, much more basic matches than the previous generation or current generations. S.T. Jones, a perennial star throughout the most of the 80s, actually. So it's interesting to see him here in this time and place. Jones is a perennial babyface for the majority of that time from the Antigua. Paul Butcher Vachon doing the majority of his stuff in the AWA area and also in Canada as well, Montreal. And so that battle is there. Kind of a push off by S.T. Jones. Jones kind of gets a bit of a power advantage. These are the old studio tapings. Baron Michael Cicluna slows the match down when he gets in the ring. Hard forearms on Austin and goes to town on his opponent quite a bit there. Sends the opponent into the wrong corner. If you are those folks, Pete Austin gets quite beat up and some hard chops and strikes by both Vachon and Cicluna along the way. S.T. Jones, probably your biggest star in the match from the babyface side. I would say Cicluna, probably for the Northeast, is the biggest star in that area. And then the hot tag to S.T. Jones, hard kicks along the midsection and knee drops by Cicluna. Jones hits one pretty good shot, and Austin goes in to try to remedy the rest of the match. Gets a 2 count, doesn't get all he wants on it. And ultimately, there we go. Vachon is kind of backing off, looking for peace in the corner, doesn't get all he wants on it. Hard chops by Austin. Austin manages to get a bit of an advantage for a few minutes, but Cicluna manages to get the final finish. Bunch of forearms on Austin and hard shots there. Chops and the basic things of good nature, and ultimately Cicluna gets the victory for his tandem here. Then we go back to a second match of the day, and a little bit different as we see Peter Maivia and Peter Maivia, High Chief, and Stan the Man Stasiak. Stasiak, of course, a former WWF champion. The Wizard presenting Stasiak, as it were. High Chief at this point still a babyface, I believe in 1978, and obviously anybody aligned with the Wizard is not. Stasiak only a short-term champion. WWF didn't do a lot of these at the time. High Chief, of course, having tattoos all across the body. There is a good bit of hammerlocking there, and then a strong pickup by Maivia, who tries to hang his opponent over the top rope. Doesn't get all he wants on that, but gets enough, at least, to have a short-term advantage, as it were. And then Maivia tries to gain the simplest of advantages. Pushes his opponent back into the ropes. Doesn't get all he wants on it, but gets enough. Nerve hold by Stasiak, who holds his man in place pretty assertively there. Hard shots attempted by Maivia. Maivia with a short uppercut, and ultimately gets everything he wants out of things there. Kick a couple times there, and ultimately hard pullback, and again, basic stuff there. Hard shots, and Maivia takes the majority of the offense against him. Obviously, the heart punch is the main hold of Stan the Man Stasiak. Stasiak sends Maivia to the outside. Maivia is an island individual with acknowledgement to the benefit of um, uh, the opponent. And then again, the Wizard complaining about his man needing to take a count out victory. Um, Adonis is out there, or Arion, Spiros Arion's out there. Fred Blassie says he can take out Bruno, says he can take out just about anybody. And again, we don't even have an Intercontinental Championship yet. So Backlund will be starting with the championship pretty soon. But at this point, Superstar Graham, I believe, is the champion at this point in 1978 for a couple more days. Needless to say, Spiros Arion says he wants to take out Bruno regardless, and Fred Blassie is in a pale blue sequined suit jacket. Vince McMahon looks very dapper in his yellow ensemble, and for several minutes, Blassie regales how he is one of the most dominant managers in all of the area, and a 2-on-1 match as the Iron Greek Spiros Arion defeats Pete Reed and Dennis Johnson. Lots of brawling, punch kick, really basic stuff, nothing to write home about here. Blassie is extremely satisfied with what's going on with his man on the inside, though. Tries to go for a bit of a full Nelson, but the 2-on-1 aspect holds Arion back just a little bit from getting the advantage that he wants. Shove off by the opponent and a hard forearm by Arion. Arion pretty dominant throughout, and turning on Bruno Sammartino, I think a few years before, had a major effect on his involvement, obviously. And then you see kind of the double team by the two enhancement talents, who basically the match goes longer than it would today, but at the same time, the idea being that this man can handle two individuals, backbreaker over the shoulder, and a submission win by Arion, much to the delight of Classy Freddie Blassie, the Hollywood fashion plate on the outside. Then we go to Dominic DeNucci and Joe Turkel. DeNucci, really basic wrestler, obviously most notably known for training Mick Foley and Shane Douglas, to modern fans anyway. Turkel holds on to his opponent pretty aggressively with a headlock, tries to pull the hair, tries to get everything he can out of beating DeNucci up. Of course, the Italian market for both Pennsylvania and New York liking him. Turkel with a series of forearms and arm wringer takeover. Super basic match, not a lot of high spots here, but they don't need him in 1978, which is why I prefer that era of wrestling over what's today, where it doesn't even look like a fight anymore. Anyway, highlight films post this match, which DeNucci wins in reasonably quick order. He ends up taking on, getting the win with kind of a bit of a roll through, and that's there. Highlights of Andre the Giant being talked about during the reign, and all of that. I don't know if the office is still in New York, but they're telling people to send mail there anyway. We come back to the television main event, which is Tag Team Champions Professor Tanaka and Mr. Fuji against Frankie Williams and Joe Marquise. Obviously, just having the champions in there is the main attraction of this main event. Fuji, of course, known as the 80s manager to most, but a multi-time tag team champion, mainly with Tanaka during this time frame. Ultimately, Fuji and Tanaka are brawlers, obviously doing the ceremonial throwing of the salt and other Far East tactics. Tanaka, obviously the bigger of the two between he and Fuji, sends the opponent back into the ropes, leg drop, and other such by Fuji. Fuji really very dominant, but also sneaky in his approach. Tanaka having a bit more aggression. Also tries to get the hammerlock type maneuver pretty well locked in, key locked almost behind the back of the opponent, and Fuji comes back in with a couple of forearms and chops to the back of the neck to get an advantage for him here. Then we go to the process of things there, and cutting off the ring, the nerve hold, and all of that leads to a victory for the tag team champions. And we will close on that note for this particular episode. We'll be back with more right after this.